On air, online, on demand. Watch AFR when you want, where you want with CN8, the Comcast network.
Joining me now to talk more about the Bush administration policies and matters in Iraq is the man you just saw in that report, and he's the man that you see practically every day on TV because he's the man at the White House that gives the briefing to the reporters. He's the White House Press Secretary, Tony Snow. Mr. Snow, we thank you for being a part of the program today.
Thank you, Art.
First off, General Casey says 12 to 18 months. Is that a realistic goal for being able to get our boys to come back home?
Well, keep in mind what he's talking about is 12 to 18 months to turn over primary military responsibility to the Iraqis. There may be some residual American troops there. It's interesting because Prime Minister Maliki, you may recall, at the beginning of the year said something like that, and people at the time rolled their eyes. General Casey's not the kind of guy to blow smoke. If he believes it's possible, I think it's possible.
What else do the Iraqis need to do, does the Iraqi government need to do before that can become a reality so that there can be a real timetable for a troop withdrawal?
Well, they're really a series of steps, and it's not just military, because as you're trying to build peace in Iraq, you got to get all the institutions in place. So obviously from a security standpoint, you have to continue building capability in what they call the Iraqi security forces, the military, but also in the police. They've had a real problem with the police because many of the cops have been seen as either being part of the militia or corrupt or whatever. They've got to build a large, professional, and trustworthy police force. That's part of it. Meanwhile, on the economic side, you have to be able, once you go into neighborhoods like in Baghdad, neighborhoods that have been devastated by violence, you got to go in and rebuild them. You have to start building businesses so people can have jobs. On the political side, you have to keep working so Shia, Sunni, Kurds, and others are going to feel that they're fully invested in a government where their rights are guaranteed, their rights are secure, and they have the freedom to go ahead and make their case. And you want to make sure that Iraq doesn't break into sort of splintered and feuding factions, but instead a nation that is multicultural, is diverse, but at the same time is distinctly Iraqi.
No one would argue that this is a very complicated situation, and put on top of that October. October has been deadly for our American servicemen and women who are serving in Iraq. The critics say, Mr. Snow, that the president waited far too long to soften the approach and to begin to talk in real terms about withdrawal of our troops and at the expense of too many of our soldiers. How do we respond to that?
Very simply, we've been doing this all along. People may not have focused, but the president has been saying all along that you pursue three tracks. You've got an economic track, a security track, a military track, and a political track. And as a matter of fact, we've been actively engaged in all three. Why do you think we went to Baghdad earlier this year? We went to Baghdad to talk to the Maliki government, not only about security issues, but about building a political structure that everybody be welcome in. We created something called the Iraq Compact, or actually the International Compact with Iraq, which was an open invitation from investors around the world to come and do business in Iraq. That's our initiative. I think people have made the mistake, maybe, especially politicians, of thinking that the president has approached this strictly from a military point of view, and that's never been the case. What's now happening, and it's interesting, Art, is that everybody's saying the president ought to be doing this, this, and this, and it'll turn out to be policies that we've been following for months. For instance, the president should talk about reconciliation. We've been talking about reconciliation not only publicly and privately. The president ought to talk about militias. We've been doing that for months. So many of the things that critics are saying, boy, we're glad they finally started doing it, we've been doing for a very long time. And either they haven't been listening or somehow they haven't gotten the word. But we've been actively engaged in all those.
They haven't been able to see it. It may be a better way of putting it, because these initiatives that you talk about aren't visual initiatives.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the military, that is certainly very visual, and it's vivid in our American consciousness here. And as we said, we see the insurgents, we see the violence in the streets, and we see the death toll continues to rise. What can be done to quell the insurgent violence right now?
Well, actually, a lot's being done, but I'm glad you raised the issue of the pictures, because I think a real disservice has been done to American servicemen and women. You're right, we see them die, we don't see them succeed. General Casey made a point today. 3 years into this war, we haven't lost a battle. We haven't lost a single battle, and our men and women have been absolutely incredible in the way they've been comporting themselves. Furthermore, what they have done is some incredibly heroic activity in terms of trying to rebuild the country. Last week it was announced, for instance, their oil, they're actually now drilling and getting more oil than ever before. Electricity's up. A whole series of things have been going on. And instead of focusing on simply the deaths of American servicemen and women, it's time to focus on what these people were doing when they're alive and also what their colleagues are doing. Hundreds of thousands of people have been in Iraq. And the one thing I hear most from people who come back is, why don't they cover what I'm doing? Because, for instance, CNN this week is showing pictures of a sniper killing an American. Well, show what the Americans are doing. Maybe that's partly our fault, I don't know. But I think it's really important that people get a sense that the American servicemen and women are winning. They have not lost a battle in 3 years, as the general said. But more importantly, they're showing what it's like to be Americans. They're committing acts of incredible generosity and ingenuity in helping a country get back on its feet.